The U.S. Department of Justice says human trafficking, also known as trafficking in persons, is a crime that involves compelling or coercing a person to provide labor services or to engage in commercial sex acts. The coercion can be subtle or overt, physical or psychological. Exploitation of a minor for commercial sex is human trafficking, regardless of whether any form of force, fraud, or coercion was used. Let's get a different perspective on how it happens.
I have met one person in multiple countries who's been kidnapped and literally thrown in the boot of a car. One. And so what we find is that traffickers are much too sophisticated for that. They are much too pragmatic for that. It's much easier to bring someone along willingly, who's traveling willingly, who's voluntarily crossing a border. Much easier to do that than it is to bind someone up with duct tape and try and bring them across a border or transport them involuntarily. And so because of that, we have trafficking scenarios emanating out of places like Tenancingo in Mexico, where young men will go out to the community, they will find young women to romance, to woo, to marry. Those young women will then be put into forced prostitution and brought to the United States. And so there are a number of cases here in the United States involving sex trafficking, where sex trafficking victims are taken up and down the eastern seaboard. They're run by this criminal organization out of Tenancingo with its links here in the United States. And those women originally are recruited because they think that these are their boyfriends or their husbands. And in a lot of cases, unfortunately, they have children with those men. And so if you think about it from the perspective of a victim, you are so much less likely to cooperate with law enforcement when your child is being held as a hostage back in Mexico, or your child is being held as a hostage by your trafficker here in the United States, who is also that child's father. And so the bonds of human trafficking are not just business bonds of organized crime, they can also be highly charged emotional bonds.
How human trafficking often occurs. Traffickers begin by building trust with their victims. They may offer false promises of employment, a better life, or romantic relationships. This process, known as grooming, can involve gift giving, providing affection, or offering support to meet the victim's emotional or financial needs. Once trust is established, traffickers may manipulate victims into exploitive situations. Victims are forced to work in various industries, including agriculture, construction, domestic work, and the sex trade. They often work long hours under poor conditions with little or no pay. The traffickers profit from their labor while the victims remain trapped in a cycle of exploitation. Who are the traffickers? Traffickers include individuals such as pimps, acquaintances, or strangers who prey on vulnerable individuals. Family members, even parents or relatives who exploit their own family members. Business owners, owners of establishments like farms, restaurants, or parlors who use their business as fronts for trafficking operations. Organized crime groups, gang members, or international criminal networks involved in large scale trafficking operations, or even online predators. Individuals who exploit digital platforms to manipulate and control victims, particularly minors. Trafficker profiles. A significant portion of traffickers are male. For instance, a 2017 analysis of child sex traffickers in the U.S. found that 75.4% were male, with an average age of 29 and a half years. Women can also be traffickers, often serving in roles such as recruiters or managers within the trafficking operations. They may use their gender to gain the trust of their victims or to manage other women in exploitive situations. Gang members. Some gangs are involved in sex trafficking, viewing it as profitable criminal enterprise. These groups may use violence and intimidation to control their victims and maintain operations. How to recognize if you're being trafficked or if you're going to be trafficked. Overbearing presence, accompanying victims to appointments or public places and speaking for them. Controlling behavior, insisting on controlling the victim's interactions and decisions. Inconsistent stories, providing conflicting or rehearsed explanations about the victim's situation. Lack of personal belongings. Victims may have few items or identification documents. If you or someone you know is at risk of human trafficking, it's crucial to take immediate steps to protect yourself and seek help. Some actions you can consider is calling 911 if immediate danger, contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline, develop a safety plan, or reach out to a trusted adult or individual. But to ensure if you are being trafficked, make sure you recognize the signs. Lack of freedom, such as victims often cannot move freely, speak for themselves, or leave their situation. Physical signs, unexplained injuries, or poor hygiene. Control tactics. Traffickers may monitor communications, limit access to identification documents, or impose strict rules. And lastly, isolation. Victims are often isolated from family, friends, or social networks. To prevent being trafficked, make sure to stay connected. Maintain regular communication with trusted individuals, especially when traveling or meeting new people. Avoid isolation. Traffickers often prey on individuals who are isolated. Building and maintaining healthy relationships can provide a safety net. Also, be cautious online. Be wary of unsolicited job offers or online relationships that seem too good to be true. Also, make sure to research employees or employers before accepting a job. Research the employer and ensure the offer is legitimate. Know your rights. Educate yourself about labor laws and your rights in the workplace. That one is an important detail. Supporting someone after they have been trafficked requires a compassionate, patient, and gentle approach. Healing is a long-term process, and the right support can empower survivors to rebuild their lives with dignity and hope. To work towards these steps and helping them heal, make sure they are safe and in a quiet space. They will need your love and support and your understanding. So make sure to be as understanding as possible. Stay in contact with them at all times. Never leave them alone, as that can cause more stress than that has already been put on. Even after being trafficked, there's still long-term and short-term effects, such as injuries. Victims often suffer from bruises, burns, broken bones, or even head trauma due to physical abuse. Sexual health issues. Increased risk of sexual transmitted infections, or STIs, unwanted pregnancies, and genital trauma.